All right, let's get started, everyone. Welcome to this one-week workshop on social foundations for statistics and machine learning. So, yeah, I'm just going to give some quick opening remarks here before we open it to the actual talks. And so let me start by talking about the motivation for this workshop, about the underlying idea. Then I will tell you briefly about our speakers and the schedule for the workshop. And then I'll briefly talk about some logistics before we get started. So in terms of the motivation, if you've read the news in recent years, you might have come across headlines like these. So these are headlines kind of touching on different topics. The first one is about a perceived replication crisis in various disciplines, and the question about whether empirical sciences have appropriately addressed this replication crisis. The third one here is about this idea of algorithms manipulating human behavior in some way or other. Second one, maybe my favorite here, is about killer robots fighting out humanity because they're producing paperclips. And so there's all kinds of bigger discussions going on here. On the other hand, if you open like a standard textbook in statistics or machine learning, typically you will start off with foundations that are based on some form of single agent decision theory. So this idea that you have some procedure or algorithm that's maximizing some measurable objective, and it's based on whatever information it has. And then it's all about how we optimize that objective. And so I guess the starting point for this workshop and kind of the broader agenda here is the argument that this framework is insufficient to think about some of these bigger questions that have come up. It's insufficient to think about issues like the replication crisis and various approaches that have been proposed to address it. So to talk about things like publication bias, p-hacking, about pre-registration and various proposed reforms of the publication system, where kind of the basic point of departure would be to recognize that a rational single agent who's dynamically consistent has no reason to deceive themselves or to selectively report findings, and correspondingly has no reason to tie their hands. So these issues, I would argue, are fundamentally social issues, or issues that come up only when we think about knowledge production in a social context. And similarly, if we think about all these different debates about the social impact of AI, the ethics of AI, questions like fairness, algorithmic discrimination, and inequality, but also all these debates about value alignment and related issues. And again, I guess the basic argument would be that if you do really take the single agent framework literally, single agent has no distributional conflicts or has no value alignment because there is just a single agent. And this contrasts, of course, when with the world where we start thinking about multiple agents who have different objectives, have different information, different constraints, maybe different resources. All of which is arguably well understood in many disciplines like the philosophy, sociology, history of science, and science and technology studies, and so on. But what I think is maybe less well understood is how to turn this insight into formal prescriptive recommendations, which is what I would think of as one of the main tasks of statistics and machine learning as fields. It's kind of coming up with recommendation how you should process data, how you should report estimates or tests, how you should construct decision-making algorithms, and so on. And here is, I think, kind of a point where economics, in some sense, as an intermediate discipline, can potentially contribute something, because in a way it shares like some of the presumptions or the frameworks of these different disciplines. On the one hand, just as statistics and machine learning, economics as a field is very used to talk about things like constraint optimization and probability theory and so on. On the other hand, as a field, it's also very used to talk about settings with multiple agents, with unequal endowments, with conflicting interests, with private information, and so on. And so there's different ways this can play out. I think this potential contribution of economics. One is we can, which is something I've been interested in, is thinking about how we can use the toolkit of mechanism design to think about optimal statistical decisions, but decisions subject to constraints, particularly constraints of implementability that come up in the mechanism design framework. Another slightly different potential contribution would be to think about using the toolkit of causal inference and of welfare economics and social choice theory to think about analyzing the social impact of algorithmic decisions. Right? It's kind of as an alternative framework to thinking about fairness. Instead of thinking about fairness, thinking about what are the consequences of inequality and the well-being of those affected, however well-being is defined. And based on that, think about how as a society we want to design alternative algorithm objectives. Right, so that's just for kind of the big picture of where I was coming from in organizing this. So now in terms of our speakers, I'm very excited about having these 7 great speakers here today and for the rest of the week, I hope. Coming from philosophy, computer science, and econometrics. So from economics, we have Isaiah and Jan. From computer science, we have Celestine, Nika, and Anna here today. And from philosophy, we have Karina and Lili. And so the kind of the format of the workshop is also a bit non-standard, trying to be non-standard, in the sense that it was trying to organize this in a way where we're not just all rushing through our own talks without really listening or engaging. Instead, kind of the pace is a bit slower. So this is going to go over the whole week. Everybody is going to give 2 talks, and we are going to first have a sequence of tutorial talks, which are supposed to be some sort of like graduate level lectures to bring us on the same page across the different disciplines that we're coming from. So that's going to happen from today until Wednesday. So today we will start with Karina talking about algorithms and social epistemology, then Celestine talking about performative prediction, and then Jan talking about econometrics with misaligned preferences. And tomorrow we are continuing with talks about causal inference, about corrections for selective complication and attention, and about inequality in social networks. And on Wednesday we will talk about foundations of learning and incentives. So that's going to be the first half of the workshop. And then kind of with this broader background, hopefully being on the same page, we will have everyone diving in more into kind of more frontier work and their own recent work, kind of building on these tutorial lectures. And so we will then continue with talking about algorithmic inequality in social networks, about noise and algorithmic judgments, about the regulation of black box algorithms, algorithmic collective action, and then Friday, the last day of talks, I'm talking about multi-objective learning, scientific communication, and causal diagrams. And then finally on Saturday, we will conclude everything with a panel discussion. Hopefully kind of taking what we've seen this week and talking about how we could come up with an agenda going forward, thinking through what are the big open questions across these different fields, and thinking through what the different fields can contribute to each other and so on. So that's for the substance of the conference. And finally, just for some logistics. So for everyone, not just the speakers, there's this panel discussion Saturday. In the afternoon, there will be coffee and pastries outside the seminar room. So everybody feel free to help yourself. And on Wednesday, we reserve the table at the pub, the King's Arms, which is close by. Everybody's welcome to join for that. Just for the speakers, we have lunch, which will be served in the common room, which is downstairs. We have the break room 2126 reserved, which is the corner room up there. So feel free to hang out there anytime. We're going to have dinners at Nuffield on Tuesday and this should be a Friday actually. So since these are clearly scheduled, we're going to meet there at 6:40. And finally, we've reserved a guided tour of Oxford, which I have also never done, on Wednesday as a break between the tutorial lectures and the talks. And just finally to mention, there's a bunch of other things going on, bit overscheduled, but tonight after Jan's talk, if you're interested, there's a panel discussion with Raj Chetty and Joseph Stiglitz in the Mathematical Institute. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. in between the talks, we have Whitney Newey presenting in the econometrics lunch here. And Friday, we also have an econometrics seminar with Benedict Pötscher, which unfortunately overlaps with scheduled talks. Miscoordination. Anyway, thank you. And I am excited to start with the first talk by Karina.